Hello, my name is Sagar Chandra and I'm going to present my survey on the Modern Engine Control Unit, also known as the ECU. Here are some pointers as to what I'm going to be talking about in my topic during my presentation. I speak about the ECU, its system parts, the architecture, the CAN bus, the next generation CAN known as TT-CAN, also known as time triggered CAN, the gateway between CAN and FlexRay, and power and energy efficiency methods. Here's the history of ECU. One of the earliest attempts to use such an automated device was developed by BMW in 1939, called the Commodore Garratt, which is a 14-cylinder radial engine. However, it had many issues as it would change gears randomly due to a surge, which would make the engine stall, which gave rise to hybrid digital analog designs, which became popular in the mid-1980s. They used analog techniques to measure and process input parameters from the engine, then used the lookup table stored in the digital ROM chip to yield a pre-computed output values. Then came the ECUs, which I'll talk in depth later on in the slides. They were basically developed by GM. Then ECUs are also used in aeronautical applications, which are called as FedEx, which is in short for Full Authority Digital Engine Controls. Since I'm focusing on automobiles and the ECUs used in them, let's talk about the automobiles, ECUs used in automobiles. Here's an insight about the modern automotive ECU. ECU is basically the automobile's brain. The ECU reads the driver inputs which are sensed by the sensors and provides it to the actuators to maneuver the vehicle as interpreted and desired by the driver. It also interprets data by mapping it using lookup tables which are pre-programmed into the units. ECU is basically a closed loop control, meaning a control scheme that monitors outputs of a system to control the inputs to a system, thereby managing the emissions and fuel economy of the engine. An automobile can have several ECUs based on its complexity and the features it provides. A modern day premium class car can have as many software lines of code as an aircraft, and also nearly the same number of ECUs, which are about 80 to 100. Here's the picture of the ECU where it contains the memory, the input, the output in the processor. The main part of the ECU basically is the memory, because it's the main component in any hardware present along with the processor. Here's a basic description of the system parts available in ECU. It contains a digital to analog converter. When sometimes the ECU has to provide analog voltage signal to drive some of the engine components, this converter comes in handy. It's basically since processor is a digital device, it needs this particular device to help in conversion. Then comes the signal conditions, which are present because sometimes the inputs or outputs need to be adjusted before they are read. A signal condition is basically a circuit that adjusts the level of signals coming in or out. Then comes the communication chips, which implement the various communication standards used in the car, like CAN, FlexRay, and LIN, which I'm going to talk about later on. Then comes the instrument clusters, which gathers and displays data from various parts of the vehicle. And then the smart sensors, which are integrated with all the electronics along with the microprocessors, that enables it to read the voltage, calibrate it using temperature compensation curves, and digitally outputs the pressure onto the communication bus for it to be transmitted. Then we'll speak about the main aspect, which is the functional architecture of the ECU. As shown in the diagram, the top layer, which is the control layer, makes sure all the control strategies are implemented, meaning that the input given by the driver is properly read and interpreted, and the decision is taken in a split second, after which the data output is delivered. Then comes the signal acquisitions and the actuation layers, which extract data from the sensors and pass it on to the actuators for their part of the work to be done. That is possibly taking binary and analog to digital converted values and protracting them as engineering values like RPM or torque. Then the real-time operating system layer coordinates the hardware and software layers by managing time-triggered and event-triggered tasks between the ECU hardware and the ECU software, which shows this points out to this as an embedded system. Here's a look into the ECU structure. The driver gives inputs to the driver interpreter, which is a representation of the interface between the driver and the ECU. The input tasks can range from steering, braking, applying gear to minute things such as turning on the indicator and other such minuscule events. Then comes the engine controller, which takes in the input from the driver interpreter, ascertains the value of the torque to be generated and provides it to the actuators, which execute the above demand. This controller mainly has two main tasks, which is the injection and the ignition. It has to make sure that the fuel regulation and the airflow regulation is maintained, because the ratio between the airflow and the fuel flow which goes into the piston must be kept constant at 14.7, and this is a stoichiometric constant, and which means that the 14.7 grams of air is sucked in, 1 gram of fuel is used and burnt, which is common for a petrol engine. If the ratio is leaner, the engine generates more power, and if the ratio is richer, which is 13.7:1, that means the power is being compromised. Then comes the actuators control, which receives the input from the engine controller, which is the previous subsystem, and comprehends it and drives the actuators. It is like an activation or an enable signal to the actuators. Here are basically the communication protocols used in the ECUs, which are the CAN, FlexRay, and LIN, which is local interconnect network. So I'm going to speak about CAN in depth later on. Let's take a look at FlexRay and LIN. Speaking about FlexRay, it uses time division multiple access to run. It's basically like mobile phones. It uses multiple transmitter and a receiver. FlexRay is also basically a fault tolerant high-speed bus systems which supports high data rates of up to 10 megabytes per second. It's said that Ethernet may replace FlexRay in the future because Ethernet is faster. The LIN, also called as the local interconnect network, is a one-wire serial network protocol developed mainly because CAN and FlexRay were too expensive. It supports speeds of up to 20 kbps and employs a master-slave network. CAN, as shown in the diagram, was basically introduced by Robert Bosch, and it is a message-based protocol designed specifically for automotive applications. Today, as you can see, almost all passenger cars has at least one CAN network in it, because it controls everything from oxygen sensor to power drain control module to stability controller to steering wheel angle sensor. Everything is interconnected via CAN for communication. Here is a general look at the system bus configuration of the CAN, where the CAN bus is connected to the transceiver and controller and the microcontroller of the ECU. Now I'm going to speak about the message data frame, which is the important aspect of the CAN. It supports two message frame formats, the CAN base and the extended frame. The base frame has a length of 11 bits of the identifier, and the extended frame supports a length of 29 bits for the identifier. And the main difference between them is that the CAN extended frame is made up of 11-bit identifier and an 18-bit 11-bit identifier called the base identifier, and an 18-bit extension known as the identifier extension. So it has basically more bits, but it is to be noted that the 11-bit message always has the priority over the 29-bit message. And in the data frame protocol that's been mentioned, the important thing is to note is the CRC, which is the cyclic redundancy check. It is basically a checksum, which is an error detecting code to detect any unusual patterns and to maintain parity in the output. It is similar to checksum used in coding languages to see if any part of the data is lost during transmission. Now I'm going to speak about scheduling of CAN. Then in real-time processing, the urgency of messages to be exchanged over the network can differ greatly, like from rapidly changing dimensions, like for example the engine load has to be transmitted more frequently and therefore with less delays than other dimensions like the engine temperature. The priority at which a message is transmitted compared to another less urgent message is specified by the identifier of each message. The identifier with the lowest binary number has the highest priority. The bus access conflicts are resolved by bitwise arbitration of the identifiers involved by each station, observing the bus level bit for bit. This happens in accordance with the wire-and mechanism by which the dominant state overrides the recessive state. Here it can be in the diagram it can be seen that the node 2 has the least binary number, So it gets transmitted first. Then the losers, which are the other nodes, node 1 and node 3, so as to say, they automatically become receivers of the message with the highest priority and do not reattempt transmission until the bus is available again. Then I go to TT-CAN, which is a protocol layer, which is of a higher layer protocol on top of CAN. It is ideal for applications in which the data traffic is of a periodic nature. TT-CAN basically provides mechanisms to schedule CAN messages in a time-triggered as well as event-triggered way. This allows CAN-based networks for closed-loop control and also increases the performance when used with TT-CAN. Then gateway. This basically combines CAN and FlexRay. The introduction of advanced control systems which combine multiple sensors, actuators and electronic control units placed boundary demands on CAN. Thus FlexRay came into picture, and developers are now planning to use FlexCAN protocol in future systems. While doing so, one important thing to note is that all these protocols are being developed and improved upon. They must be still designed within the power constraints available, because the car battery available is only of 12 volts and the components designed by them should not dissipate more power and consume the required energy when necessary. So this can be done using the E-bar-E architecture, the electrical architecture. There is a need to design such energy efficient automobiles because of the rise in fuel prices, stricter emission standards and electrical powertrains. The figure shows this partial and subnetworking, which comes in handy when some of the components in the car do not need as much energy and power to run compared to those running on CAN FlexRay protocols. The electric energy consumption of the vehicle's electronic components has a direct impact on a vehicle's CO2 emission, which is the carbon dioxide emission, and its range. So that's an important thing to note. So here's my topic, which covered current modern automotive trends with key emphasis on ECU. Then the architecture and the protocol which was used to implement the systems were well designed, and we also learned that developers are trying to improve and innovate further by combining protocols such as CAN and FlexRay together for an energy efficient automotive system. Thank you.